Hi, I'm Doombabe and you're watching my channel. Okay, so I wanted to make this video because I've seen a lot of parents specifically thinking, okay, well my kid wants to get into Magic, what should I know? I saw it when I worked in a game store. I see it as just a customer at a game store. I see it as someone who frequents the internet a little too much. And I thought I'd make this to sort of clear some of the air for parents. Now the first thing you're probably thinking is, what is Magic the Gathering? Well, Magic the Gathering is a trading card game, obviously. Players construct a 60 card deck with no more than 4 of each card, and they use a blend of spells and creatures and lands and planeswalkers. They sort of use that to beat their opponent, and you do that by bringing your opponent's life from 20 to 0. So if anything, think of it of like Pokemon. If you've ever watched Pokemon, if you've ever watched your child watch Pokemon, it's really not as different as that in terms of the concept and the endgame goal. Now, one thing I see a lot of parents ask is, okay, is it appropriate for my child? And that's not really a fair question to ask because not every child is the same. The game is rated 13+. This is because it does depict scenes of violence. You'll see people getting stabbed, bleeding out, etc. It as well has some art that may frighten more sensitive players, such as zombies, ghosts, vampires, and just things of the like. Things that may frighten someone very small, like 3 or 4. But on the flip side, you have angels, you have heroes in gleaming armor, you have cats. So the game itself in terms of art and content is very balanced. If you're worried about sexual themes, you can kind of relax because Wizards in terms of sexual content doesn't push it. You've got the occasional like busty angel, and you've got Liliana, who sometimes dresses a little more on the scanty side, but it's not something where you're going to have like boobs in your child's face all the time and butts and people having sex, and no, that's really... Wizards is aware that they have a 13+ rating, and honestly, if it weren't for the violence, they could probably drop it down to like PG or like maybe 8 or 10+. If anything, the biggest obstacle I see with your child playing Magic is it has a somewhat of a high learning curve. While there are plenty of pre-made decks that have rules inserts and you can find everything you need on the internet if you get confused, there are some things that confuse like more experienced adult players, but that happens not very often. Usually once you get the concept of the game, cards, they usually have reminder text that tells you what an ability does, and it's really just context clues by that point. But if something does come up, if your child is at an event, most events have what we call a judge, which is someone who is certified by the DCI, who makes the rules, to know pretty much everything there is to know about the game. But in terms of decks, if you want to help your child make a deck, I suggest starting him or her out with a deck of just one color and somewhat simple mechanics. Your local gaming store can be a ton of help with picking out cards. If you have one, I highly suggest going there before going online, because the decks you will find online are usually very top tier and require not only experience but a good amount of skill to pilot. And then that brings up the question what to expect financially. And Magic the Gathering isn't a hobby that won't leave an impact on your wallet, but it isn't any more expensive than getting your child into like soccer or arts and crafts. To build a casual deck that your child will be playing at home or just with friends, it shouldn't cost more than maybe $20. But in terms of the more competitive decks, like as your child gets more experience and knows how to pilot different things and they want to try out new things, that can get a little expensive. Let me tell you, when it comes to getting the cards that your child wants, it is a lot cheaper to just go out and buy the singles. Like, I know some people think it's a little ridiculous to spend $20 on 4 cards or to spend $40 on 4 cards, but it makes a lot more sense than to just go and buy booster packs at $4 a piece and hope that you get that card. Because booster packs are random, you don't know what you're going to get, and instead of paying $20 to get 4 of a card, you could spend $20 to get a bunch of really crappy cards that you don't want and you don't really plan on using ever. Now, the tournaments you'll probably bring your child to are called Friday Night Magic. You just go to your local gaming store on Friday. Every Friday they will have, usually it's a standard tournament. If you don't know what that is, I will link all of the rules and stuff in the bottom. Your local gaming store will be able to tell you everything you need to know about standard. That's not something I really plan on covering here. Friday Night Magic, as I said, it's on Fridays. It's usually a very casual environment. It's much more sociable than it is competitive. The entry is usually $5 to $7. Most gaming stores will add 1 to 2 packs per person for the prize pool. Other than Friday Night Magic, drafts are also very common. Drafts are usually $10 to $15 depending on where you go, and each player receives 3 packs. And it's very fun because not only is it a cool way to build a collection, but it's a very laid-back environment. A step up from drafts are the sealed pre-release events. These are usually every few months, as Wizards of the Coast releases a new expansion. They're usually $20 to $30 per person. I've heard of it going as high as $40, but they also had a lot of benefits included, like catering, which I never heard of until then. Your child would receive 6 booster packs, but the thing with pre-release events is they usually start right at midnight on a Friday night, Saturday morning, and they usually can run till 6 or 7 in the morning. So with pre-release events, try to see, if you don't want your kid up that late, if the store does a Saturday event. If they do a Saturday event, those usually vary in time, but for the most part, they start at about noon or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Outside of events, I'm sure that your child will want to purchase Magic product, and I made an entire video. I will put it here for you, and that will show you everything that I recommend for new players. For the most part, Magic the Gathering isn't super expensive. It only gets expensive when you start getting really competitive. Another big issue I know is for parents is the community. What will you expect from the community? What kind of people go to play these games? This really all depends on your area, but Magic the Gathering's community is greatly composed of awesome people. I mean, yeah, every group has their dirtbag, but it's not any different than if you were to just go to work and you've got that one guy that drives you crazy because he spits spitballs at you all day. For the most part, the majority of the people that go to these events are very good people. They're very helpful. They're willing to teach players new things as they go along. There may be some minor swearing. I mean, F-bombs aren't very frequent, but they do happen. But again, it depends on the store. Some stores do have language rules when kids are around. The store that I worked at, we didn't really have a language rule because it wasn't really a big enough problem. I mean, again, you hear hell, damn, ass, things like that. But it wasn't
you mother effing blah 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 blah, you're a stinky poop.
But first store I ever went to when I first started playing Magic, they had a language rule. Whenever someone under the age of 10 was in the building, the owner was like, okay, language rules are in effect, and we never really had a problem from what I remember. This is something where I would definitely recommend going to your local gaming store and asking what kind of play group they have for Magic, because not every store is the same, not all stores have the same rules, and it's better to just get it out of the way before even getting your kids' hopes up and being like, ha, nope. If you can't teach the game on your own, then go to the local gaming store and ask the employees who they feel is best equipped for teaching. As someone who managed an LGS for a couple of years, we develop not a very, very close bond, but we do develop friendships. We develop bonds within the community. And usually that's with the regulars that are a lot more polite. If anyone knows who the ideal person is for teaching a younger, new player how to play Magic, the gaming store employees are definitely going to be the ones who know who to go to. If you have a gaming console, Duels of the Planeswalkers is an official Magic the Gathering video game available on Steam, Xbox Live, PlayStation Network, iPad, and Android. It has tutorials, online play, solo play if he doesn't want to play against real people, and it has multiple game types so he won't get bored with it, like, immediately. If you can't get to a local gaming store frequently, this is a pretty decent substitute. A lot of even like really experienced players, we don't care so much about the tutorials, but we love this game. It's so fun. It's like we can just play Magic whenever we want. Now, this isn't something that I see a lot of questions for, but there are benefits to playing Magic. It's not just playing a game and like pretending to summon demons. You don't actually pretend to summon demons. That's a myth. Seriously, there is a thing that really bothers me with people who are like, oh, I want to get my kid into playing Magic, but I don't want him to become a Satanist. The stories where you hear the Dungeons and Dragons players, like the early Magic players, people who sort of like went a little crazy and really thought they were wizards and they like killed themselves when their characters died, they already had so many problems that all those games was sort of like a trigger. The benefits, again, of Magic goes just beyond passing time and playing games. Magic requires strategic thinking, which means that your kid's cognitive abilities would be greatly improved. Many parents have reported that their child showed improvements in social skills, critical thinking, strategy, math, reading, vocabulary, decision making, and creativity. That's because Magic is a numbers game, really. It requires a lot of doing math in your head, trying to figure out, okay, well, if he has this, this, and this, how many turns do I have before he kills me unless I have something to, like, help me win? The game also requires a lot of reading. You need to read what all of your cards do, you need to remember what your cards do, so it helps with memory, and you learn words. I'm not joking, like, you would be amazed at how many people said that their vocabulary expanded just because they played Magic, because Magic introduced them to words that they didn't even know existed. But the biggest thing I really want to focus on is strategy, because it's a game of numbers that requires planning and a lot of thinking ahead. Even just making a deck takes work. You need to make an even deck that has an appropriate distribution of cards, lands, creatures, instants, and other card types. Having too many spells to buff your creatures that you don't have enough of can ruin a game, and not having enough lands can do the same thing. Many players, we find ourselves thinking like 2, 3, 4 turns ahead. We look at what our opponents have on the field, what we have on the field, what are the chances of getting this, this, and this out of our deck, what are the chances of your opponent having this, this, and this in his deck, and you'd be surprised. A lot of planning goes into just playing a game. But in terms of other benefits, another big aspect in encouraging your child to play Magic is that they can make plenty of friends. Magic events push social interaction, which means that your kid's going to be a part of a friendly and accepting community. Now, I'm not saying that he or she will be best friends with 50 different people immediately, but players frequently chat while they're playing. A lot of the times at the more casual events like drafts and pre-releases and Friday Night Magics, you'll see people having full conversations while playing the game. It's a good way to get past social anxiety, and it can lessen the detrimental effects of behavioral issues like autism. Actually, autism and specifically, I've heard a lot of stories of people sort of improving because Magic gave them something to focus on with the comfort of there being set rules, sort of like a safety blanket. I taught my cousin, who has Fragile X syndrome, the basics of the game. I realized that as time went on, he became much less impulsive and he threw fewer of his rage fits. It teaches kids patience, such as waiting on an opponent to finish his or her turn, or to not make impulsive decisions and to sit and think of what actions you can take and what the potential consequences of your actions can be. And a lot of behavioral institutions have used games such as Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon to give kids a way to interact with each other and sort of get over their issues. Beyond that, a huge part of Magic is trading, which teaches cooperation, compromise, and determining quality. I have become a pro at figuring out what is a mint card, what is near mint, what is lightly played, moderately played, heavily played, and damaged. And that's usually not the easiest thing to figure out because there's sort of like a really fine line. But another thing when it comes to quality is I noticed that kids who were not so much raised with, but if they frequently played trading card games, they treated their things a little nicer in general. Because Magic, you need to take care of your cards because if they come too damaged, you can't play with them. That teaches us to be a little more gentle, and that goes off from just the game to treating other things with a lot more respect. Also, and while I'm thinking of value, don't let your kid take cards to school. Kids steal stuff all the time, especially game-related stuff, because they're kids and games are cool. That is all I have for now. If I left anything out, please let me know in the comments, or you can inbox me directly. Otherwise, until then, I will see you guys later. Peace.